It's February 7th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with defense cooperation between South Korea and Saudi Arabia. South Korea will export 10 of its homegrown Cheonggung-2 missile defense systems to the kingdom in a $3.2 billion deal. It's the second round of such exports to the Middle East after securing a deal with UAE back in 2022. The South Korean government decided to raise the medical school admissions quota by 2,000 by 2025 to alleviate a chronic shortage of physicians. Doctors' groups are pledged to go on strike, which the government warns will be met with consequences. Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel, while Israel says it has let the families of 31 hostages know that their relatives are dead. South Korea will ship 10 of its domestically developed Cheonggung-2 medium-range surface-to-air missile batteries to Saudi Arabia. The $3.2 billion contract is the second sale of the system to a Middle Eastern country. Our Yoon-hee reports.
South Korea has announced the deal to export to Saudi Arabia 10 MSAM-2 mid-range surface-to-air missile batteries. According to Seoul's Defense Ministry on Tuesday, the deal, worth some 4.2 trillion Korean won, or $3.2 billion US, was sealed last November between South Korean defense firm LIG Next One and the Saudi Arabian Defense Ministry. The core weapon system of Korea Air and Missile Defense, called the Cheonggung MSAM-2, provides defense against air attacks and surface-to-air defense capability against aircraft. Also known as the Korean Patriot, the MSAM-2 uses hit-to-kill missiles capable of intercepting incoming missiles. The system is the key force in lower-tier defense, which aims to intercept missiles at an altitude of 30 to 40 kilometers. The advanced technology system includes simultaneous engagement of multiple targets, high mobility with canard and side jet thrusters, and direct targeting with a power-enhancing warhead. This is LIG Next One's second export deal. It previously signed the deal with the United Arab Emirates in 2022. Meanwhile, as part of a visit to the Middle East, South Korea's Defense Minister Shin Won-sik and his Saudi Arabian counterpart signed the Memorandum of Understanding on Sunday in Riyadh. Under the MOU, the two countries will establish a joint committee to cooperate in research and weapons development in the mid to long term. On Tuesday, Shin visited Qatar and signed an MOU on furthering the two countries' defense and arms cooperation in light of the 50th anniversary of their diplomatic relations this year. Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the medical school admissions quota will be increased by 2,000 per year starting in 2025. Now, that is to address the chronic shortage of physicians here in South Korea. Lee Si-hoo reports.
Beginning next year, the South Korean government is increasing the total enrollment quota for the country's medical schools by 2,000 per year. This means a total of 5,058 students will be entering med schools every year, a drastic hike from the quota of 3,058 that's been frozen since 2006. All this comes as South Korea aims to provide quality health care for all, especially for those in rural areas and those in need of essential care.
급속한 고령화와 보건산업 수요에 대응할 의료 인력까지 포함하면 2035년까지 약 1만 5천 명의 의사가 더 필요한 것으로 추산되고 있습니다. 국민의 건강과 생명을 지키기 위해 의사 인력 확대는 더 이상 늦출 수 없는 시대적 과제입니다.
Following President Yoon's comments on Tuesday, Health Minister Jo Kyu-hong, speaking at a ministry briefing, reiterated the reason for the hike.
2,000 more medical students a year would mean as many as 10,000 doctors entering the workforce after training between 2031 and 2035.
Cho said that while this does not exactly meet the estimated demand, the government will continue to periodically evaluate and manage supply and demand. In the process, the government will take into consideration relevant factors such as the advancement of healthcare technology, the aging population, and any future pandemic situations. Meanwhile, the health ministry has vowed that it will work to build a robust regional healthcare system by making sure that a certain percentage of the student body of medical schools outside of the capital area is filled by students from the local region. The specific size of the enrollment by school will be announced later after a review and discussion with the Education Ministry. Lee Si-hu, Arirang News.
And not everyone in the medical sector is welcoming the government's plan. Doctors are threatening to take collective action, including a nationwide strike. Song Yu-jin has more.
The medical school quota increase has been a topic of heated debate here in South Korea. The government has been pushing for an expansion to address the shortage of doctors in a country where there are only 2.6 physicians per 1,000 people, far below the OECD average of 3.7. However, this proposal has triggered strong opposition from many doctors in the country. At an emergency press conference on Tuesday, the Korean Medical Association warned of a nationwide strike if the government unilaterally proceeds with the decision to raise the quota.
This has the potential to stir up issues in our national health insurance system, which is on track to turn into a deficit this year and is anticipated to experience a decrease in accumulated funds. There are also concerns about the increase in social costs and the risk of our natural sciences education taking a hit, a critical field in enhancing Korea's competitiveness.
The association, consisting of around 140,000 doctors and medical students, has been critical of the government's plan, arguing that fundamental measures should come first. This includes enhancing the working environment for physicians through better pay or exploring methods to better allocate them so that certain areas of medicine do not experience a lack of doctors. In response, the Korean Health and Medical Workers Union, made up of nurses, caregivers, and healthcare workers, issued a press release dismissing the KMA's actions as an unjustifiable coercion. The union says increasing the number of doctors is supported by the majority of the general public, as it can prevent illegal medical practices and is crucial to enhancing the overall quality of medical services. It also challenged the KMA, calling the government's decision unilateral, emphasizing that the Ministry of Health and Welfare has engaged in dozens of meetings and consultations with the association. If a strike does happen, the Health Ministry has warned of countermeasures, such as an immediate return to work order. Those who do not comply may face a license suspension of up to a year, imprisonment for a maximum of 3 years, or a fine up to 30 million Korean won, which is around $22,500 US. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
The OECD forecasts the South Korean economy will not grow as much as expected in 2024. But overall, things are looking better globally this year. For more, we're joined by Professor Shin Se-dun this morning. Welcome back, Professor.
Good morning.
Good morning. South Korea's finance ministry took a rather careful approach that regarding the OECD report, the 2.2 growth projection is based on the South government's 2024 economic policy directions. Is that so? I mean, should we actually be concerned?
Well, we don't know why OECD has lowered its projection for economic growth for 2024. But during the 3 months between November and February, you could see that there has been 2 important developments in Korea. One is the stock market in Korea has been very sluggish in the month of January. Actually, the Kospi index has dropped about 7%, which is very rare compared to other countries. Another thing is, for the last 3 months, consumer sales. Consumer sales has been dropping 2% in the fourth quarter of last year. So I think the very poor performances in stock market, on the one hand, and very poor performances in retail sale for the last quarter of 2023, I think that has made OECD to lower economic projection by 1/10 percentage point.
That's a very good point. But Professor, some experts say it's going to be actually hard to fill the 2% growth rate this year. What does that mean? I mean, if we just look at the numbers, it doesn't make sense considering South Korea only posted 1.4% growth last year.
Right, right. Even if Korea grows at about 2% this year, many people don't feel it's better than last year, at which the growth rate was 1.4%. There are, I think, about three reasons. One, there has been developing a huge pile of inventory. Those inventory is regarded as investment, and it is included, and it makes economic growth a little higher. So one problem is huge stockpile of inventory that has made people to feel less about 2% economic growth. And second thing is huge reduction in import. Last year, import has been decreased about 12%, and that decrease in 12% in imports is going to contribute to higher economic growth. Another point, third point, which is very important in Korea, is the 2% economic growth is contributed by a small number of industries like semiconductors and automobile. So all the other industries are feeling very poor performances in 2023 and this year 2024. So inventory and negative imports and the polarization, I think, is the reason why people don't feel Korean economy is growing 2%.
Definitely. Professor Shin, we also have to talk about the global economy on the front. Now, that is expected to expand at 2.9%. That's up from an estimate of 2.7% announced back in November. Can we see this as a brighter outlook? I mean, it's still lower than the 2023 annual growth of 3.1%.
Yeah. Well, one reason is, surprisingly, United States economy is growing very fast. Everybody believed, by interest rate higher than 5%, definitely United States economy would go down. But that was not true. 2023, it is projected to be 2.5% in the United States. Still, the OECD and the many institutions believe that economic growth this year for the United States will be a little lower, but surprisingly very high. That is one thing that the global economy it seems to be better. And another thing is inflation is stabilizing very fast. So that means that sooner or later, all over the world, the central banks will be lowering the interest rate. And that lowering in interest rate will contribute to increase in consumption, increase in investment. That's why the year 2024 is better than 2023, and 2025 will be still better than 2024. So I think the resilience in the United States economy and a very fast stabilization of inflation globally, that I think is going to contribute future prospects a little better than we would have expected in the past.
I see. Professor Shin, I know we still have a long way to go, but OECD believes the growth in the global economy to hit 3% in 2024 next year. Where is this confidence coming from?
Yeah, that is, as I said, U.S. economy is doing pretty good. And especially, many countries like India, Indonesia, Australia, Italy, those countries are surprisingly doing pretty good, except for possibly China. And in this case, Korea, they lowered the economic projection a little bit. But generally speaking, I think inflation is going to stabilize. And the U.S. and many other European countries are doing pretty good. That, I think, will contribute for better future in 2024 and possibly 2025.
So it's based on the better than expected performance by major countries, maybe not the China, but U.S., Italy, like you said, G7 countries, right?
Right.
All right, Professor Shin Se-yeon, thank you as always for your insight. You have a great day.
Always my pleasure.
Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel. Now, the news comes as the UN reported 67% of the Gaza Strip is now under an evacuation order. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Qatar says Hamas has given a generally positive response to a proposed truce deal with Israel, as the militant group reiterated its call for an end to the Israeli assault on Gaza. According to Qatari Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed Al Thani, Hamas had a positive response to the proposed deal being brokered by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, but did not provide further details. Hamas said in a statement that its leadership had reviewed the ceasefire deal with a positive spirit, including details of securing relief and shelter, reconstruction, the lifting of a 17-year-old crippling siege, and the completion of the prisoner exchange process. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who is once again in the Middle East, will meet with Israeli officials and discuss the proposed truce deal. Meanwhile, Israel Defense Forces spokesman Daniel Hagari said Tuesday that more than $150 million were transferred from Iran to the militant group, adding the funds were utilized by Hamas to sustain its operations underground. Hagari also underscored the implications of Iran's support for terrorism, adding it may extend beyond the Middle East region. Updating on the Israeli hostages held by Hamas, the spokesman said that 31 of the hostages held in Gaza are confirmed to have died. Israel has said 136 hostages are still being held in Gaza. With the armed conflict between Israel and Hamas now spanning 4 months, the UN says Israel's evacuation orders in the Gaza Strip now cover 2/3 of the territory. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said Tuesday that more than half of Gaza's population is now crammed into the town of Rafah on the border with Egypt and surrounding areas. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The New York Times reported Tuesday that Moscow had released $9 million worth of frozen North Korean assets after Pyongyang provided them with weapons for its war in Ukraine. The report cited anonymous Western intelligence officials, but did not identify the Russian bank that released the funds from the $30 million in frozen North Korean assets being held. Sources say the arrangement occurred sometime after the North sent arms. And Washington said last month that Russia had fired at least one of the missiles given by the North at Ukraine. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yol spoke on the phone with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on Tuesday, marking the first conversation between the two officials since Cho was appointed last month. During the 50-minute call, Wang invited Cho to visit Beijing to further develop bilateral relations. In response, Cho agreed to schedule a visit via diplomatic channels at a time that's convenient for both sides. The top diplomats also agreed on the importance of managing supply chain stability and decided to seek new sources of development through deepening bilateral trade and investment. On North Korea, Cho urged Beijing to play a constructive role in bringing Pyongyang to dialogue and expressed concerns about North Korean defectors being forcibly sent back to China. An increasing number of North Koreans hold a negative view of their leader Kim Jong-un, according to South Korea's Unification Ministry. And food shortages in the north may be worse than already known. Kim Jong-sil has this report.
An extensive record of the voices of people who have left North Korea creates a stark image. Unlike what people have been led to believe, the reality of the lives of North Koreans under the regime may have been much harsher than imagined. On Tuesday, the government here released a comprehensive report on the North's economy and its society at large. The report is based on a trove of information that had been kept confidential until now. This is a report that holds the voices of 6,351 North Korean defectors. The Ministry of Unification says this will give valuable insight into understanding the reality of the regime that's closed and isolated from the world. Research experts asked each defector more than 1,100 questions on a one-on-one basis. According to the report, 72.2% said they had not received any food rations from the state once Kim Jong-un became the leader of the North. More than 50% said they received neither food rations nor wages in exchange for work. The ministry said this indicates the regime has been exploiting people by stressing passion and loyalty without paying wages. However, the defectors said most North Korean residents were now having 3 meals a day instead of 2.
Some assessed that the lives of North Koreans have improved, with many buildings being built in Pyongyang ever since Kim Jong-un came to power. But based on our research, this is a mere optical illusion, and the lives of the residents have actually become harsher.
The report said that bribery has doubled since Kim took power, with most residents believing that the gap between the rich and poor in the north has widened. 56.3% of those questioned said they felt negatively about the change of leadership in the north. The ministry gave extensive data in the form of numbers, which it hopes will allow the public and the international community to get a better understanding of the regime's reality. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the US, a federal appeals panel unanimously ruled that former President Donald Trump does not have presidential immunity in his 2020 election interference case. The appeals court's decision rejects the former president's claims that he is immune from the related criminal charges and leaves Trump open to prosecution. Trump has been charged with conspiracy to overturn President Joe Biden's victory in the 2020 election and with committing fraud in an attempt to remain in office. In January 2021, a mob of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. in an effort to overturn his election defeat. The case's trial was initially scheduled for March 4th, but has been postponed until Trump's immunity claim plays out. In the UK, King Charles was seen in public for the first time on Tuesday since it was made public that he was suffering from cancer. Charles was seen waving and smiling to passers-by in a car with Queen Camilla while on a short drive from his home, Clarence House in central London, to Buckingham Palace on Tuesday afternoon. It is believed that Charles and Camilla left on board the royal household helicopter later that day, departing for Sandringham Estate. Buckingham Palace announced on Monday that the 75-year-old king had been diagnosed with a form of cancer during his recent treatment of a benign enlarged prostate. In Hong Kong, the chief executive of the region, John Lee, has publicly complained about football superstar Lionel Messi's failure to play in a match between Inter Miami and a local team. Speaking Tuesday, Lee demanded that organizers explain why Messi could not play, saying the Hong Kong government was disappointed that a detailed explanation was not provided promptly. The game's organizer, Tatler Asia CEO Michel Lamounière, apologized at press conference on Monday, saying that star players will play if they are fit. Fans were left disappointed at the sold-out Hong Kong stadium on Sunday as star player Messi sat on the bench as Inter Miami beat a Hong Kong 11 4-1. Inter Miami was booed off the field by some 38,000 spectators, with fans later demanding refunds. To Japan now, where this year's Miss Japan beauty pageant winner renounced her title after the magazine revealed she had an affair with a married man. Ukraine-born Karolina Shino, who was crowned Miss Japan in January, renounced her crown and resigned from her modeling agency after the weekly Bunshin magazine reported her relationship with a married doctor. Initially, Shino claimed that she did not know he was married, but later she said she was aware of her partner's status and that he had a family. Shino has apologized on social media, as well as to the man's partner and his family. Miss Japan organizers said on Tuesday that following Shino's renunciation, the 2024 winner spot will remain empty. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good morning. Late winter weather continues today with afternoon temperatures forecast to go up similar to yesterday. Then we'll end this week's work week tomorrow with warmer than average temperatures. Some inland regions will have high levels of ultrafine dust during the first half of the day. Then more dust will blow in overnight, boosting dust levels to bad levels. Meanwhile, Gangwon-do province will see less than 1 centimeter of snowfall. Central regions in Gyeongsang-pukdo could see snow flurries passing by during the day today. It is a chillier morning than at the same time yesterday, but highs will go up near season norms. Seoul topping out at 4 degrees, Daegu at 7 degrees Celsius this afternoon with a glimpse of sunshine, but Jeollado and nearby areas will be under much brighter skies today. The weather looks promising for the Seollal holiday weekend under fairly sunny skies, but with freezing morning temperatures. Then we'll get one step closer to spring after the Lunar New Year holiday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.